Visitors to the Penn State Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Science will first encounter a push-pin map of where you can see an on-air meteorologist who graduated from our program. And just about every state is represented on that map. We are pleased to chat with an alumni who graduated from the department in the spring of 2018. He currently works as an on-air meteorologist in Pittsburgh, and you may recognize him from Weather World as a forecaster just 5 years ago. Please welcome to the Weather Water Cooler tonight, Adis Juklo.
Great to be here, Rob. Thanks
Adis, great to have you on the show. Take us through your journey post-Weather World.
Yeah, so I graduated in spring of 2018, and then after that, I was actually already filling in at a station in Steubenville in WTOV in Ohio, and so that lasted for a few months after I graduated, and then after that, about a couple months after I graduated, I was able to get my first full-time offer at ABC 27 in Harrisburg, or WHTM, so that's where I'd actually spent then the next 5 years of my life. And then finally, a couple months ago, May of 2023, I got a call back to start a full-time position at my home station in Pittsburgh, WPXI. So it's been awesome getting to kind of go all around the region and then finally land back home.
And that's something I think a lot of meteorologists don't have that perspective of what it's like to be able to actually get a job in your home area. What's that been like, having your parents and family watching you on the air at a station you've probably watched all your life?
Yeah, that's the station I grew up watching. The meteorologists that are on there now, you know, I still work with them now. I watched them growing up. It's amazing, you know, getting to broadcast to not only your family, but also your former classmates, your high school teachers, you know, all those people you made a connection with, and being able to have that homecoming is really special. And it still hasn't worn off, and hopefully it never will.
That's awesome. And one of the things I really like about you, Adis, I've watched your journey as even I've been back these last 5 years, is seeing some of the nuggets that you post on social media or that you're sure to include in some of your weather forecasts. Yeah. So that means kind of digging a little bit deeper, adding some context. Talk a little bit about how you go about doing that and why it's so important.
Well, it's so important to me because I feel like we're in an age now where you have to stay relevant as a TV meteorologist. I mean, we're battling apps, we're battling computers, and as a human forecaster, we have to make sure that we find a way to stay relevant with the viewers. So for me personally, I'm always looking at a variety of different climate stats, especially with what's been a very wild period of weather in these last few years. There's always something to talk about. And so just being able to add that extra flavor, if you will, to the weather, I think really makes people appreciate it more and hopefully gets a few more people to watch because it's adding more context on where they're living right now.
Absolutely. So in your 5 years in the broadcast industry, obviously we've seen a lot of changes. It's a rapidly changing industry with how people consume weather and climate information. What are some of the changes that you've seen, and where do you think the industry is going?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing in the last few years is really being more focused on impacts-based forecasting. You know, anybody can just log onto an app and find out the high temperature or what that probability of rain means. But it's our job as the TV meteorologist, as the weather communicator, to tell people what that means. And so not only just that part, but I think also just finding ways to stay engaged with the viewers, whether it's through Facebook or Twitter. I mean, that's been around for a little while now, but really being able to hit hard with updating the app, updating the hourly forecast, you know, because that's really what people are going to tune into first. So I'd say those are probably the biggest things in the last few years. And where it's going down the road, I mean, I really don't know. I'm assuming we're going to be seeing new platforms be rolled out, and I think we just have to be prepared to go through with more changes and just do our best to stay as engaged with the viewer as possible away from television, because the job, it has not been just being on TV anymore. It's been that way for a little while now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sticking with the theme of changes, one of the roles of meteorologists at a lot of local stations is being kind of that station scientist. And of course now, ever increasingly talking about our changing climate. What are some ways that you've had the chance to do that in your career?
Yeah, so we did do some of that when I was in Harrisburg. Haven't done that so much in Pittsburgh yet, but we're certainly going to get into that more. Just kind of talking more about, you know, the records that have been set, because I was working a lot with Eric Finkenbinder, who's the chief meteorologist at ABC 27, and he was big into farming. He was big into figuring out, you know, how the weather impacted farmers, because farmers notice that change. You know, how when it rains, it seems to rain harder, or when we go into these droughts, it tends to be more prolonged, or when we see these heat spells. So, you know, part of my job with him was to kind of put together these numbers and really show everybody what all those records were that were set, and there were a lot of them in the last several years, and, you know, obviously how that will impact our climate going forward, not just for agriculture, but for everyday people, things that you'll notice at home. So that's something I hope to get into more as well here in Pittsburgh.
I mean, that's one of the things that we do here on Weather World for sure. Stick with the facts, not sensationalizing things,
Exactly.
but sticking with what we know.
Yep, and what people really need to know.
So as you look back and think back on your time here
Yes.
on Weather World and your time at Penn State, what advice would you give to those who are currently in our program as they look forward to careers, not just in broadcasting,
Yeah.
but in meteorology overall?
I think you just really got to make sure that you're skilled in many different things. You know, this isn't just you come in here and you learn to become a forecaster. I mean, you've got to be a good storyteller. Sometimes you might have to put together a piece that maybe you're not used to, you know, so being able to edit, being able to produce, things like that. You know, you never know when that station that you work at is going to need you in a little bit of a different way. And of course, being flexible, you know, being able to take that job where you might need to go a little further away, you might need to work weekends for a little while, but just sticking with it and knowing that at the end of the day, you know, this is what we love to do and it'll pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. We always like to close out this segment by also kind of reminiscing and thinking about favorite memories.
Yes.
And I'm sure you probably have some from your time
yeah.
at Weather World or Penn State. What's one that really sticks out in your mind?
You know, I spent so much time here in the Walker River. I think for me, the most fun was covering winter storms as a part of Campus Weather Service. We all just kind of got together, we nerded out. It was so many of us. And it was just so much fun. And really something like that we probably won't ever experience again because everybody kind of goes their different ways.
It's such a unique club, too. It just celebrated its 50th anniversary
Yeah, that's
last
right.
fall.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Addis, great to have you
Great
back
to be
here
here,
on the
Thank
show.
you.
And we will be back in just a moment with more.